Summer 1974. Muhammad Ali sat in his Deer Lake dining hall reading the morning paper. Three young boxers walked in and made a mistake that would haunt them for life. They disrespected the greatest. What Ali did in the next 45 seconds, without ever putting down his newspaper, became the most legendary story ever told at Fighter's Heaven. The morning sun filtered through the windows of the modest dining hall at Muhammad Ali's training camp in Deer Lake, Pennsylvania. It was July 1974, and Ali was preparing for the rumble in the jungle against George Foreman. But at that moment, Ali wasn't thinking about Foreman. He was sitting at a wooden table, wearing a white t-shirt and sweatpants, reading the Philadelphia Inquirer sports section. A cup of coffee sat beside him, still steaming. Fighter's Heaven, as Ali called his training camp, was nestled in the Pennsylvania mountains. The camp was open to visitors during training hours, but mornings were for recovery, reflection, and reading the newspaper in peace. Or at least that's what was supposed to happen. The three men who walked into the dining hall that morning were professional boxers, legitimate fighters hired as sparring partners. Their names were Tommy, Marcus, and a third who preferred to remain anonymous. They were young, hungry, and like many young fighters, believed they were better than their records suggested. They'd been at camp for 3 days, watching Ali move slower than his legendary 1960s footage. They'd seen him taking punches in sparring. They'd heard whispers that maybe Ali was past his prime, and they'd started to believe it. Tommy was the loudest of the three. He'd landed a good combination on Ali during sparring the previous day, and it had gone to his head. Seeing Ali sitting alone, reading his paper, Tommy decided to make an impression. "Morning, champ," Tommy called out, his voice dripping with false respect that barely concealed mockery. Ali didn't look up from his newspaper. He turned a page slowly, deliberately, as if he hadn't heard anything. Marcus laughed. "I don't think the champ heard you, Tommy. Maybe his ears are ringing from all those punches he's been taking." Still, Ali didn't react. He took a sip of his coffee, his eyes never leaving the sports page. Those who knew Ali well, his real team, the people who'd been with him for years, would have recognized this as a warning sign. Ali's silence was more dangerous than his trash talk. But these three young fighters didn't know Ali, not really. The third fighter, emboldened by his friends, stepped closer to Ali's table. "You know what, champ? We've been talking. We think maybe you're not ready for Foreman. We think maybe you're taking this sparring too easy. Maybe you need some real competition." Ali turned another page of his newspaper. Without looking up, he spoke for the first time, his voice calm and quiet. "That's so?" "Yeah, that's so," Tommy said, moving to stand directly across the table from Ali. "In fact, we think the three of us could take you right now. You look pretty comfortable sitting there with your coffee and paper, maybe too comfortable." Marcus added, "Old lions get lazy. Maybe you've gotten lazy, Ali." Now, to understand what happened next, you need to understand something about Muhammad Ali in 1974. Yes, he was 32 years old. Yes, he'd lost some speed. Yes, he'd been banned from boxing for 3.5 years during his prime. But Ali was still Muhammad Ali. He'd recently demolished Joe Frazier in their rematch. He'd beaten Ken Norton. And more importantly, he'd spent his entire life being underestimated and counted out, and proving people wrong. The dining hall had gone completely silent. A couple of camp workers who'd been in the kitchen had stopped what they were doing, sensing something was about to happen. Angelo Dundee, Ali's legendary trainer, had just walked in and immediately froze when he saw the scene unfolding. Ali carefully folded his newspaper, but didn't set it down. He held it in his left hand, took another sip of coffee with his right, and then looked up at the three young fighters for the first time. His eyes were cold. "You boys want to spar with me?" Ali asked, his voice still quiet. "Not spar," Tommy said, his bravado reaching its peak. "We want to see if you're really the greatest, or if that's just talk. 3-on-1, right now." Ali stood up slowly. He was still holding the newspaper in his left hand. He looked at Angelo, who was shaking his head frantically, trying to signal these young fighters to back down before they made a terrible mistake. "Angelo," Ali said calmly, "get the ring ready." "Ali, come on," Angelo started. "These boys don't know what they're—" "Get the ring ready, Angelo." The walk to the outdoor boxing ring took less than 2 minutes. Word spread instantly. Within minutes, about 30 people had gathered around the ring. Ali climbed into the ring, still holding his newspaper. He hadn't put on gloves. He hadn't changed clothes. He just stood there, the newspaper folded in his left hand. The three young fighters climbed in. They had put on gloves. They'd taken off their shirts. They were bouncing on their toes, throwing practice jabs, trying to look intimidating. Ali just stood there, reading his newspaper. Tommy looked confused. "You're not putting on gloves?" "Don't need 'em," Ali said without looking up. "Angelo, you got a watch?" Angelo, who'd seen Ali do extraordinary things for over a decade, just nodded. "Time this. I'm giving you boys 45 seconds, all three of you. Come at me together, one at a time, however you want, but you got 45 seconds to prove you're better than me." "And if we can't?" asked Marcus, his confidence starting to waver. Ali looked up from his paper for the first time since entering the ring. His smile was not friendly. "Then you leave my camp today, and you don't tell nobody what happened here." "What about you?" the third fighter asked. "What happens if you actually what? Beat me?" "Boy, if the three of you beat me up in my own ring, in my own camp, you can tell everybody. I'll tell everybody. It'll be the biggest boxing story of the year." He looked at Angelo. "Start the count." What happened in the next 45 seconds has been debated, exaggerated, and mythologized in the years since, but multiple witnesses were there, and their accounts are remarkably consistent. Angelo called out, "Go!" Tommy rushed in first, throwing a wild overhand right. Without putting down his newspaper, Ali leaned back exactly far enough for the punch to miss by an inch. While Tommy was off balance, Ali flicked out his right hand, his bare right hand, and caught Tommy flush on the chin with a jab that probably traveled all of 6 inches. Tommy's legs went rubbery. He didn't go down immediately, but he stumbled backward into the ropes, his eyes glassy. Elapsed time, 3 seconds. Marcus, seeing his friend hurt, charged in from Ali's nuffed side. He threw a combination, left hook, right cross, left hook again. Ali, still holding the newspaper in his left hand, slipped all 3 punches by moving his head in a small figure-8 pattern that made it look like he was gently nodding along to music only he could hear. Then Ali pivoted, and as Marcus overextended on his final left hook, Ali caught him with a short right uppercut to the solar plexus. The punch didn't look like much. Ali's arm barely extended, but Marcus made a sound like all the air had been sucked out of his body. He bent forward at the waist, gasping, and Ali followed up with a gentle, almost kind tap on the chin that put Marcus on his rear end. Elapsed time, 12 seconds. The third fighter, the one who'd stay anonymous, had been hanging back, trying to time his attack. Now, seeing both his friends hurt, he had a choice: press forward or give up. To his credit, he pressed forward. He came in smart, behind a careful jab, not overcommitting. It was actually decent boxing technique. Ali, still holding the newspaper, started reading it again. He was literally looking down at the sports page while slipping punches.
The crowd around the ring couldn't believe what they were seeing. Angelo would later say it was the most extraordinary display of defensive boxing he'd ever witnessed. Ali wasn't just avoiding punches, he was doing it casually, almost dismissively, while reading about himself in yesterday's sports section. The anonymous fighter, frustrated and frightened in equal measure, finally threw caution to the wind and launched a desperation overhand right with everything he had behind it. Ali saw it coming. How could he not when he could apparently see punches while reading a newspaper? And instead of slipping it, he caught it with the newspaper. He raised his left hand, still holding the folded newspaper, and blocked the punch with it. The fighter's gloved fist hit the Philadelphia Inquirer sports section, and the newspaper barely crumpled. Then Ali struck. He hit the anonymous fighter with a right cross that landed with a sound like a baseball bat hitting a watermelon. The fighter's mouthpiece flew out. He spun a full 180 degrees and landed face first on the canvas. Elapsed time, 28 seconds. Ali stood in the center of the ring, straightened out his newspaper where it had gotten slightly wrinkled from blocking that punch, and continued reading.
Tommy had recovered enough to try one more time. He pushed off the ropes and threw a looping left hook. Without looking up, Ali leaned back, let the punch pass, and caught Tommy with a left jab to the nose. The newspaper was still in Ali's left hand, so technically Tommy got hit with both a fist and the morning sports section. Tommy sat down hard, blood streaming from his nose. Elapsed time, 34 seconds. Marcus had gotten his air back and was trying to stand. Ali walked over to him, walked, didn't rush, and looked down at him. "Stay down, son," Ali said quietly. "Ain't no shame in staying down." Marcus, wisely, stayed down. The anonymous fighter was still face down on the canvas, moaning softly. "Time," Angelo called out. 45 seconds. Actually, it had been 34 seconds, but Angelo was being generous. Ali walked to the center of the ring, unfolded his newspaper fully, and made a show of reading the headline. Then he looked at the crowd that had gathered. "Paper says I'm too old for foreman," Ali announced. "Says I'm past my prime. Says the young fighters are going to take over." He glanced at the 3 defeated fighters. "Y'all agree with that?" Nobody said anything. "Angelo, help these boys out of my ring," Ali said. "They got some packing to do." And then Muhammad Ali climbed out of the ring and walked back to the dining hall to finish his coffee. The 3 fighters left camp that afternoon. True to their word, they never publicly spoke about what happened. The anonymous fighter claimed he'd hurt his back lifting weights. Marcus said he'd gotten food poisoning. Tommy claimed a family emergency. But word spread anyway. Within boxing circles, the story became legend. Young fighters who thought about challenging Ali suddenly found other things to do. And every morning for the rest of that training camp, Ali sat in the dining hall reading his newspaper in peace. Years later, after Ali had shocked the world by knocking out George Foreman in Zaire, after he'd reclaimed the heavyweight championship, after he'd proven all the doubters wrong once again, Angelo Dundee was asked about Ali's greatest performance. Most people expected him to mention the Foreman fight, or the third Frazier fight, or one of the other legendary bouts. Instead, Angelo smiled and said, "July 1974, Deer Lake. 3 young fighters thought they could test him. He never even put down his newspaper. That's when I knew, truly knew, that we were going to beat Foreman." Because that morning, Ali wasn't just physically ready, he was mentally on another level. He was so confident in his abilities that he could defend himself against 3 professional fighters while reading the sports page. You can't teach that. You can't fake that. That's greatness. The newspaper from that morning, slightly crumpled from blocking a punch, was kept by one of the camp workers.
It eventually ended up framed in a local Pennsylvania boxing gym with a small plaque underneath that reads, "The Philadelphia Inquirer, July 1974, the only newspaper to ever block a professional boxer's punch," and Muhammad Ali was holding it. The story serves as a reminder of something important about Muhammad Ali. His greatest weapon was never his fists, it was his mind, his unshakable belief in himself, his ability to be simultaneously calm and explosive, reading a newspaper one moment and dismantling 3 professional fighters the next. Ali went on to defeat Foreman that October, reclaiming the heavyweight championship at age 32. The same age he was that morning when he dismantled 3 fighters without putting down his newspaper. Maybe those young fighters should have read the newspaper more carefully. It might have warned them about underestimating Muhammad Ali. If this incredible story of confidence, skill, and one of the most legendary moments in boxing history moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about the difference between confidence and arrogance, between being ready and just thinking you're ready. Have you ever seen someone defend their reputation in an unforgettable way? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing untold stories about the moments that made legends legendary.